Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
How are we doing?
Very good, very good.
Perfect.
So here we go. Let's go to an intro. Good evening and welcome to our adventure series. As you can see, the shirt might be here, but Mr. Alex Taylor is not. So this evening we have Mr. Lee Isaacs with us.
I can only apologise in advance. People were expecting Alex Taylor. They've got me, and obviously we have similar taste in shirts, but that's probably better. I mean, one of us is outrageously handsome and talented, and the other's on a plane to the United States. Is that right?
That seems fair. Seems fair.
I think
Seems
that's
fair.
a fair assessment of everything.
Oh, absolutely,
Thank you for having
absolutely.
me.
So welcome, and today we are going to do Tempranillo, then another Tempranillo, then a couple more Tempranillos, then one more Tempranillo, and then we can finish whatever you fancy with.
Have you got any Grenache?
Gonna have to be another Tempranillo.
Tempranillo.
So
Do you like Tempranillo?
I enjoy a little glass of Tempranillo, but what we're going to do, we're going to go through 6 Tempranillos. We've got the Slido today, so I'm just going to pop this up for everyone to have a little look at. So you're able to join us at slido.com or towtc.co.uk/taste.
Trips off the tongue.
Oh, exactly. And there you'll be able to put in your little wine tasting notes to see what is going on. So that is all for you. There we are. So I think first things first, we should get the first wine in the glass.
That sounds
that's really
good to me.
important.
I'm
So we
quite
shall do
thirsty.
that.
I'd imagine everybody watching this is thirsty. Are you all Tempranillo fans? Obviously, it's a Tempranillo tasting, so one would assume that you are. But do you know, here's a fact that I didn't know. Last year, the most searched for grape variety on those wine search apps that they have now was Tempranillo.
Really?
Which I think is staggering, because that wouldn't have occurred to me that there would be such familiarity with Tempranillo itself. I could see people knowing a particular form of Tempranillo, which we might be tasting now, but it somehow seeped into some form of consciousness.
Using that as the grape as the name.
Yes.
That's really interesting. Because, so we're going to split this, I say, into 2 halves, but really 6 wines.
Do we have oranges in the middle? In between the two?
Oh, I see. No, we do not.
Did that work? Because I don't know if that's... I don't like football, so I don't know if that was relevant.
No, absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 Tempranillos from Spain.
Okay.
So, I think Spain is the home of Tempranillo. 90% of the world's Tempranillo is grown in Spain. So, there's a lot of it is done there. So they're doing it right. And I think a lot of the time we talk about Rioja, but there are other places that grow Tempranillo. So we're going to have a little look through that. And we'll see how, the same grape, just not very far from each other, do vastly, vastly different things. And then in the second half, we're going to do a dive in and run around and get to the rest of the world.
See what it does around there. Well, here we go. Here's a stat on Tempranillo for you. You said most of it grows in Spain, right? There's a 340,000 hectares, give or take. The second most planted grape variety is, I am grateful on a night out, by the way. The second most planted grape variety is Merlot at 266,000 hectares. Guess what? I bet you can't guess which is the third most planted grape at 231,000 hectares.
You're the man with the numbers.
Tempranillo.
Really?
It's the third most planted. I'll run through the rest of the top 10 just because I can. The rest of the top 10, you've got Iren, Chardonnay, Syrah, Grenache, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, and everybody's favourite, Trebbiano. But it's the third most planted grape, but yet 90% of it is in one place, or in one country.
No, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I think, we'll start with Rioja. Get your tasting notes. Well, my tasting notes have disappeared. Where have they gone? Oh, there we go.
Oh, here we go. Look at this. Straight in with
back in. So we've got blackberry, we've got oak, we've got warm, we've got cacao. So do you want to talk a little bit about Tempranillo, what it's all about, the kind of styles we're looking for?
So Tempranillo is it's a grape variety.
Yep.
Okay. It's one of them red grape varieties that they have. Makes red wines. There you go. It's sort of It buds at a normal time, but it's early ripening, Tempranillo early ripening. That's kind of what the name suggests.
Tempra, yes.
Tempranillo. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, we most closely associate it with Rioja, right? And we had this conversation before we went live about blind tasting and how do you spot Tempranillo. And you said something which I thought was really pertinent. Was you're not really looking for Tempranillo in a blind tasting, you're looking for Rioja. And it's that association with it's a great variety, it's quite high tannin, it works really well with oak, so we expect a lot of kind of oaky, smoky, toasty flavours. So you're kind of looking for Rioja rather than Tempranillo, right, blind?
I think so, because when, once again, it goes to the vast majority of Tempranillo that we know is in that Rioja, which comes with the oak, which comes with the aging, which comes that crianza, that reserva, that Grand Reserva kind of level. So you go, oh, there's something that's got a bit of fruit, a bit of spice, a bit of vanilla. You go, that's Rioja, and therefore, because it's Rioja, you go, it's Tempranillo.
Exactly.
It might have the other things kind of like blended in, the Graciano, the Manzuela, the Garnacha in there, but that's how it is. But I think what we're going to go through today is some really, really cool stuff that showcases how different these wines could be. So, we can't keep going back and talking about Tempranillo because there's only so many things you can say. That it's a thin-skinned grape, it likes sunshine, it needs to be well protected from the wind.
It can be quite vigorous, so you need to protect it from the wind in terms of training, but also just managing it in the vineyard, because it will give you too much fruit and then you'll lose concentration perhaps. But there's not a lot of, which I didn't realise, because we assume it's an old grape. There's not really a lot of clone of it. So like with Pinot Noir, you talk about different clones.
Yeah.
We love a bit of clone chat on a Saturday night. Who doesn't?
Who doesn't love a bit of 777? One of your, wow.
I'll get that tattooed on my shoulder, 777. It's also
better than 666, I suppose.
No, that's just hidden by my hair here. There's not a lot you can go to with Tempranillo like that in terms of this subtle variance, but it hasn't got this huge clone selection. So you go back to, it's got that acidity, it's got tannin, works with oak. We define it sort of as being quite a red fruit variety, but you can get dark fruit from it. You've got the spice. So I love the concept of this tasting is let's take that variety and see what it does at different places, because we don't associate it with being a versatile variety, right?
No, I think, until you dive deep, you don't expect to find it very many other places.
No.
So when we talk about Rioja, we've got, three main areas. We've got Rioja Alta, Rioja Baja, or now Rioja Oriental, and then we've got Alavesa, which is kind of up in the north bit, right on the bottom of the Sierra Cantabria Mountains. And this is where this wine comes from. And what's unique about this, it's the highest planted place in the region. And as Lee asked me, it's like,
how many metres above sea level would
well, as you're about to go, you thought it was about,
I think it's about
850 was what you said.
But if only there was a way of knowing the altitude of this vineyard.
I have no idea. If anyone in the chat can work out how many metres above sea level. So this is 875 metres above sea level. And what is really important is this is the highest planted vineyard in Rioja. So you're very, very high, which gives you this massive diurnal shift. So you've got that warm days, cool nights, so you can have this long growing season and keep this beautiful, beautiful acidity.
Which is, so, we're talking about Tempranillo through the prism of Rioja, which is the obvious place to start. And we have a very specific idea of what Rioja is, and forget that actually it's quite a forward-thinking, quite dynamic area. We don't associate Rioja with high altitude. We think about high altitude, the first place you think about is Mendoza in Argentina. There are other high altitude areas, of course, but you don't immediately think of that in Rioja. So the fact that someone's going, so this is Alavesa, and it's sort of like at the southeast side of Alavesa. Someone's going, I'm going to go and plant up there. That's hard work. Even today, by modern standards, that's still very high and it's very difficult to manage logistically. But to take Tempranillo up there, keep that acidity, control the tannin, I think it can give you a very different face to what we might expect this variety to do.
It absolutely does. And, we're going to need 3 Spanish Tempranillos. But Rioja, I think sometimes the problem with Rioja is it's become a brand name, hasn't it? And, if I had a quid for every time someone goes, oh, I like a good Rioja, what does that actually mean? Because there's some very, value-led Riojas, which can be comme ci comme ça, as you could say, and then there's some really top-end Riojas, and Rioja's going through this little bit of a change of feel at the moment, isn't it? So these guys started in the 1970s, and that's really when what new-ish Rioja, when Rioja really got its name, being a world-class wine region. People like Riscal and people like Marqués de Murrieta, they kind of all set up in the 1970 or a little bit, when they really started doing that. And it was all based about where the winery was and the vineyards out and around it. And then, the best wine was the wine that had been aged for the longest amount in the newest oak and had the biggest, richest flavour, and that's what it was all about. We're now starting to see this new thing, because your aging category and your legislation category used to be Crianza, Reserva, Gran Reserva, and that's where you're at. You've now got this option of this vineyard site level that came in 2017.
Very recent, isn't it? Viñedos Singulares?
Yeah, Viñedo Singular, which is this single vineyard site. And it doesn't just mean you can have a field and plug something in. That's my single vineyard, like you can the rest of the world.
Just do that.
It's got to be the very... Oh, did you need to take notes?
I just need to let my bank manager know that my plans.
But it's very similar to almost like the AVA or the AOC system, that to become a Viñedo Singular, you have to be different to the guy next door to you. There's got to be a reason why you want this. It's not just it's a geographical area by itself. It's got to have its own microclimate, its own style, its own whatever. So, and it can be just a vineyard, or it can be based on a town like Viñedos de Langora or something like that. So you're starting to see that there's two ways that Rioja's moving now, which is really cool. And people will talk about old Rioja and new Rioja. Not one is better than the other, but very different. The old Rioja is about this richness and this fruit, this aging, this decadence. And this new Rioja is about bright, fresh fruit, great acidity, liveliness.
It's interesting seeing how consumer attitudes changing as well, because we know consumer attitudes are changing. They're looking for slightly lower levels of alcohol. They're looking for less extracted, less full-bodied wines that maybe we're drinking 10, 20 years ago. And that's how we would associate Rioja with that old-style Rioja. It's big and rich and extracted. So the fact that you've got this wine region that can respond to consumer attitudes, and that's not the sole purpose they're doing it, but they can respond to consumer attitudes with the materials they already have.
Oh, absolutely. And not
have to say, well, you know what, we're going to have to plant a whole new range of varieties to make lighter body. Hang on, we're at the base of the Sierra Cantabria Mountain. Let's just go up there. Let's plant higher up. That slows everything down. Low sugar, more acidity. I think Rioja is a lot more exciting than personally I've given it credit for in recent years. You just see all this cool stuff going on.
I think so. There's a lot of newer, new age, new thing. And I'm not anti the traditional stuff. Is epic. It's really, really good. Especially in a blind tasting, very easy to pick out. Very easy to pick out.
Especially if it's an exam.
Exactly. But, El Coto have been around since that kind of thing, that 1970s kind of era. And they make everything from your nice, easy drinking, entry level, Joven, Tempranillo based, all the way up to their Gran Reservas and these, small parcels, the Finco Carbonera. You can now make your pasta joke if you would like.
Oh, yeah. What would you pair this with? Obviously, some kind of creamy pasta with bacon.
Ham,
bacon.
But that would be carbonara, not carbonera. But
it would, wouldn't it? Yeah,
it is.
I can see. So not only did I fail to ascertain the height of the vineyard from the label, I've also completely misread it. I just assumed it was Italian.
But this is also from this vineyard, very very small production. They make about 35,000 bottles of it. I think they're all numbered on the back. So
23,885 bottles. So you see what they've done there is they've put the number on the bottle to guide you. But what they've done on this instance, they made it really small, so I've had to look for it.
Yeah.
You see, whereas if it's like when I get home and I'm hungry and I open the fridge and I just stare at it and I say to my wife, "Is there anything to eat?" I'm looking at the fridge.
So I think what Neil's put here as far as tapas being a perfect pairing, I think is absolutely ideal. So what I've always said, for me being the weirdo that I am, and people who are watching this who love Tempranillo are going to shoot me now, I don't think Tempranillo pairs particularly perfectly with anything. You have oversold that. But what I do think is I think it goes very well with lots of different things. It's the ideal restaurant wine. If you go out, you sat down with a group of people, someone's having steak, someone's having a burger, someone's having a mushroom ragu, that bottle of Tempranillo does very well right at the bottom because it has the fruit, it has the acidity. It's not too far one way or too far the other.
And especially with the modern style being slightly less alcoholic as well. So I think already what we've discovered just off this wine alone is we've kind of proved our point already, so we'll probably just knock it on the head now. But the versatility of it. So it's a versatile food wine. It's versatile in terms of even within one region, plant slightly higher up. Excuse me. This has got real freshness to it. That fresh acidity running through. There's like hints of slightly crunchy herb, but beautiful fruit. I think really expressive. What we are on there, blackberry. You can see somebody suggested blackberry up there.
Look at that.
Coffee. I like that.
So blackberry, vanilla, coffee. And it is, and what we'll do when we get onto wine number 3, we'll dive in and do a little bit of a WSET level 2 SAT just to kind of run through, because I think this style of wine is a great wine to do
Mm,
learning how to taste with, because it ticks a lot of the boxes, a lot of the clusters, a lot of the styles.
indeed.
So we can work through. And then if we do that with wine number 3, when we go into 4, 5, 6 that are slightly different in style, that should help you be able to kind of pick out
Compare and
the
contrast.
quality of each said wine.
Absolutely.
But yeah, tapas perfect. You know.
I think that's. I think that. Do you know that wine is? For me, it's really thirst quenching because you've got the freshness of acidity, but you've got that slight crunch of tannin in there, just contributing to making your mouth water. So this is not every wine out there can quench your thirst. This absolutely can.
Yeah, it's
I feel refreshed and enlivened, and just so pure as well.
and that lovely acidity. It's mouth watering. Sometimes you get these red wines that are bigger, and you go, oh, you have half a glass, and it's kind of, oh, I'm done. This kind of gives that running that you want to go back and have another sip and another sip and another sip.
Great finish to it as well.
Yeah. Also, 2018 vintage, so a couple of years on it, so not old by any stretch of the imagination. And what's kind of nice is the first 3 wines we've picked are all 2018 vintage, so we get to see
Slightly
them
blended.
with a little bit. Well, let's not go
You
that
really
far.
are good.
Let's not go that
Really
far.
are good.
I try. When Alex disappears to Chicago, it's our time to shine.
It is indeed.
Something like that.
Indeed.
But on that note, should we dive into wine number 2?
I think so.
And feel free, we're in the chat. We haven't got any big, long videos today because, as we said, Tempranillo is Tempranillo, and we can only write thin skin so many times and things. So feel free to jump in the chat, ask your questions, let us know what you want to know, what Lee needs to know. There was a lovely comment about the badgers in the background having a chat. They might be more wine savvy than us soon.
I think they're basically priming themselves up to become the primary hosts. That was the word on the street? Is that right?
That's what we're hoping for.
Tempranillo and badgers. But it's interesting when we talk about Tempranillo, we really, like the fruit style, we do tend to bracket. So, as you know, if you teach WSET, there's a big focus on the red fruit stuff, and then there's a big focus on the aging stuff. But it can give you darker, richer fruit. And it's almost like it wants to express itself if it's allowed to grow somewhere different. We primarily know it for Rioja, but where are we heading with this one? Because I was really excited to try it.
Absolutely. So let's move the tasting notes on so everyone can have a little go on their tasting notes. There we are. Lovely. So we are going to Ribera del Duero. And I absolutely love Ribera. And this might be a thing, as Lee's doing. If you've got a couple of glasses, maybe keep one for the next one so you can go backwards and forwards, because it's really quite exciting to taste these things backwards and forwards. So we're in Ribera del Duero, and this is Marqués de Burgos, and this is the Ribera del Duero project from LAN, from Rioja.
LAN is, what did the L start? Logroño, Alavesa, and Navarre. So LAN is, which are the 3 sort of main areas that surround Rioja, or in Rioja. So it's a, what's the word? Acronym.
LAN.
There you go.
Yeah. You've got all the fun information.
I'm the fun one. He's the straight man, which is odd because usually I'm the straight man.
Well,
so
step by step.
It's a bit of role play this evening.
Anyway, so this is their 2018, and this is their crianza level. So crianza means it has to spend a little bit of time in the barrel and a little bit of time in the bottle before it's released. What I like about Ribera is it's generally a richer, punchier, more oomph kind of style of Tempranillo. You get more elegance out of Rioja generally, especially that new style of Rioja. Much more fruit here, bigger, bolder,
deeper, richer.
batters you in the face, kicks you in the head, and and a little bit more alcohol. I think we've gone from 13% in Rioja up to 14.5%.
So that's quite a big jump in one go. Ribera's interesting because Ribera's got a really long history. So you've got Vega Sicilia who go back to I think the 1860s or thereabouts. But this place wasn't given DO until sort of the early 80s, I think 1982.
1982.
82, look at that.
Best year everything that came into existence.
93, you mean?
Slowly.
Oh, you 80. Oh, okay, right, I see.
See what I did there?
Oh, you're older than me. You can tell. Kind of. But so this region has a really long history, but from a commercial sort of global point of view, it's really actually quite new. So you had the sort of fame produced Vega Sicilia is one. Could you argue Spain's most famous estate? Not really, but single most famous estate. They have a claim.
Yeah, probably.
Claim at that. There's a story I just looked up because I saw a box of Winston Churchill next to you. there's a story that Winston Churchill was at a fancy wine dinner in Vegas. Sicily was one of the wines paired. And at the end of the meal, he said, I don't want to drink the rest of the nonsense, but can I have that fine claret that was served with the main course? And it was Vegas Sicily. And then you had sort of like Pingus opening up and Pesquera, really big, quite famous estates that really helped to put this region on the map. And I've spent a bit of it's really high up, so you're like 800-900 meters above sea level as standard, not like going there especially with the previous one. But you drive around, it's like being in Germany, it's full of castles. There's castles everywhere. And I remember driving up the road going to see a producer, and there was this huge castle that was like really long in the eye line. And I was stunned at this castle, and the guide who was taking us around said, just wait until we go past it. And I go, wow, this is going to be like, it's not just like a long castle to look at, it's really wide. But as we went past it, it was about this wide. Oh, it's like a film set, one of those old Star Trek sets. It's like really big frontage, but very, very narrow. But it's a fabulous place to go. But as you said, we mentioned diurnal swings with the previous wine. Between summer and winter, there's a high degree of continentality here. So really hot summers, very cold winters. Between the heights of summer and the depths of winter, you can get a temperature swing of nearly 60 degrees in Ribera del Duero. So not just day to night, you do get extremes there, but it will hit 40 in the summer and it will go to like nearly minus 20 in the winter. So this is an extreme, like the kind of calendars you make, extreme calendars where you go off and pose and stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
This is an extreme wine region. This is fabulous.
I mean, it's rich, it's bold, it's beautiful, and it is.
No, sorry, can we talk about the wine, not my shirt?
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
But it does. It's a region that doesn't get the love. It really doesn't. And I also think it's because a lot of it is a little bit more expensive. You don't have a lot of cheap Riberas running around. You don't go, here's your entry-level Ribera for £6. They don't really exist. So I think it's quite difficult for people to get into it and go, I'm going to take a risk on a bottle of this, 15, 20, 30 quid is kind of where you're starting at, really, to get something of good quality.
And if you don't know this region, I mean, spending that much money on a bottle of wine is a huge punt anyway. If you don't know the region, and they tend to be slightly higher alcohol, you said here we've got 14.5. If you don't have that familiarity with it, and not everybody will realise that it's the same grape that we're talking about in Rioja, something like Rioja. They don't necessarily. It's not an obvious step out. So from memory, Ribera was put on the map by, you mentioned them earlier, by Riscal. So they've left Rioja and gone, let's go and plant it. And we see that a lot, don't we? So the producers who really made a name for themselves, made money, were in Rioja, and then they've gone, let's go and explore elsewhere, which is nice to see, because in some other countries, producers in certain regions are quite protectionist. So, well, this is what we do, we're from here, it doesn't get better than this, and they stay there. But to see people exploring out, moving out from their base in Spain and going, Spain's a big country, we've got to be able to grow these grapes somewhere else. And
and I think that's really cool, because you're taking that years and years of knowledge and know-how somewhere else. It's not, let's, a bunch of new people going, let's plant some grapes. I was lucky enough, I went to a lunch with the winemaker at Cosme Palacios on Monday, another real producer who do Viña Mayor in Ribera. And it was really cool to talk to, what the mentality is and what is similar between Rioja and Ribera, and what is vastly different and where the showcase is. And it's like, this is when we make a Rioja, this is what we're looking for. When we make a Ribera, this is what we're looking for. But the same attention to detail in winemaking. And once again, it shows that the same grape, when it moves around, can be vastly different. We'll go a little bit more into it as we go through. But also, you can go around Spain and you have a very high risk of drinking Tempranillo without knowing you're drinking Tempranillo. So if you end up in Rioja, it's generally Tempranillo. If you end up in Ribera del Duero, it could be Vino Tinto or Tinto de País.
Now, don't take the País, but yes, it could be Tinto del País, which basically means sort of wine of the country. País means country in Spanish, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So country grape, country wine.
The next one we're going to go to, which we'll go to momentarily, is the Tinto de Toro. You want to have a guess what grape that is?
Would that be a bull's wine?
It would be Tempranillo.
Yeah.
And then we can go into the south. We end up with a grape called Sensibel.
Wait, I know this one. I do know this one. It's Tempranillo?
Yes. And then I think, you go to Portugal, Tinto de Roriz that you find in Porto is also Tempranillo when you get across the border. And my favourite when you go to the east, there's one called Uva de Liebre, which literally translates as eye of the hare, because Tempranillo is this little black grape that looks like a rabbit's eye.
I wonder if they've got one of these and they're called like hair of the dog, because that would be quite useful tomorrow morning, I think. But eye of the hare, that's great. You look back at sort of how some grapes got the name and go, that's what it looks like. It looks like a hare's eye. I've not examined a hare's eye that closely, I'm not going to lie.
Well,
but
Petit Syrah, nothing to do with Syrah. It just looks like a smaller version of it. Tastes different, nothing to do with it, nowhere near. But
I believe it's enjoyed by Chucky actor Brad Dourif.
Is it?
See what I've done there? Because sometimes it's called Dourif. You see, I do. There's only two things in this world that I hate. Firstly, people are intolerant of other people's cultures. Secondly, outdated pop cultural references. Can't bear those. Can't bear them. What do people think of this Burgos? Cherry,
pepper. It's got the spice. It's got the tannins, dark fruit, that smokiness, coconut and clove coming from the oak. So this is 2018. This is the Crianza level, and you can see that because it's got this little. You can't see that because I've still got the taste in it. It's up. You see that? You've got your little Crianza stick on the back. So as you go around Spain, anywhere that's got a DO or the DOCA or that kind of stuff, as they go up their aging levels, they have to get approval from the controlling board for whatever they make. So they'll turn around and go, we've made 10,000 bottles of Crianza. They'll come, they'll check it, they'll make sure, you send samples and get the quality. And then they'll send you the little stickers. Then they'll come and inventory you and make sure you've got the right number of labels with the right number of bottles. It's not, they just send you a little email down, put yourself some Crianza stickers. So they get sent down to you. So, if you see a Crianza that's got 2021 on the label, it's a fake. Yeah. It can't be. So, Spain are really good with their aging laws and what the rules and regulations are. When it says Reserva, it actually means something. Whereas you compare it to, Australia or California, Reserva just means whatever you want. Yeah. Generally it means the better wine, but there's no legal requirements on it.
Particularly Spanish language wines. We think about wines from South America. Reserva isn't legislated for in the same way, but generally a producer would put that on their higher quality wines. It's just not legislated in terms of minimum aging. But do you remember that they used to do it in Rioja? I don't recall seeing it in another place. Do you remember the net, like the gold net?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was and it was Riscal that started that, and that was one of the very, very first ways of trying to stop people counterfeiting wine. Yeah. So that was put on there so people can copy the wines.
It's quite a good party game. I don't have a lot of experience with running party games, obviously, but when you get one of these bottles that has like a gold mesh on it, like a net, but it's quite wide, so you look at it and you go, what protection is that? I could easily manoeuvre that off the top of the bottle, get the cork out, replace the liquid. It's quite a good party game getting somebody to do that because you can't. Although it looks like I can surely manoeuvre this net round the bottle. Hours of fun at my house. Honestly, I've got all the great growing stats and we play with nets on bottles. Brilliant. My son's going to go up perfectly normal.
So what are you eating with this?
Wow. Something meaty. Now, it's obvious to go, like you've got a big hearty red wine, it's got quite a bit, it's got a lovely tannic base to it, it's easy to go steak. I'm not going steak, I'm going some form of lamb cooked over an open fire, bit of rosemary and thyme in there. I don't even like lamb cutlets cooked on the barbecue. That, I think, would be wonderful.
Something, away from steak, something that's got a little bit more gaminess about it.
That.
I like
maybe
that.
The hair.
Not the eye, though.
Not the eye, no, I don't. But I'm not on that jungle thing. But maybe the hair, a bit of jugged hair. People still eat that? Feels like a very old
this rabbit pie, you
can
go.
Rabbit pie. But with a side of gout.
Yeah, venison.
Definitely. Yeah, I like the idea of it cooked over the open flame. But it's got that, although this has real depth of structure. So the wine number one felt like quite a structured wine because it had acidity and a bit of, and you come to this is a really structured wine. But it handles the alcohol really well. It's 14.5%.
It does. It doesn't feel it though.
No,
it doesn't feel it. It doesn't feel hot. It doesn't
heavy.
feel over the top. Yeah. It's a really well balanced wine, which is great.
That's fabulous.
And I think that's the important thing that sometimes we miss. Alcohol in general is creeping up. It's just happening. But it's how do we have that richness of fruit and that balance to make sure those things go hand in hand. A 14.5%, 15% alcohol wine is high in alcohol, but it doesn't mean it has to be hot and burny and take your nose off and make your eyes water.
It's that
if it's made well,
isn't it? It's balance. And you can make wines at high alcohol with that level of balance in them. We've seen you can often get that wrong, but I think this way, just the depth of fruit, and this fruit really sort of flows over the palate. It's not hitting you all at once. You know, it is quite a powerful wine.
So I think we've covered a little bit of it, but if you want to summarise on this, full body, is that all coming from the higher alcohol? And you definitely get more power from the higher alcohol.
Definitely.
But you're a little bit warmer in Ribera, so your fruit gets a little bit riper, so you are going to get more of those deeper, darker fruit flavours. So it's going to be a combination of A, little bit more fruit, B, a little bit of a longer growing season, C, a little bit higher alcohol, and D, because it's Crianza, whereas the Rioja was just a Rioja standard, you've got a little bit more oak aging, so you're going to get that little bit more richness, that little bit more vanilla. So it's, Magda, as you know, studying wine, the answer is always, it could be 101 different things, and let's pick out what is most likely. So there is more alcohol, which leads to that. There's more oak, there's more fruit, there's warmer temperatures. So there's a lot of things going. And Ribera, I just think stylistically is a little bit more.
They tend to, whilst in Rioja, we've talked about there are sort of lighter, softer styles, and Jamie sort of mentioned, from a price perspective, you don't really see the cheaper options from Ribera. It's a very small region with lower production because of the conditions they've got. They tend to make that sort of fuller, richer style anyway. But yeah, I think it's that alcohol drives it, and then all of those other things are contributory factors. Yes, on the barbecue, right. So we're going over to Jonty's, when this finishes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great shout. Thank you very much again. Barbecue leg of lamb with the bone out goes for a few hours and would be amazing with it. Well, yeah, if it goes for a few hours, if you get it on now, by the time we finish the show, got in the car, head over,
we'll be ready.
That lamb will be ready.
We'll bring the rest of the bottle, Jonty.
Yeah, that's very
that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying.
Should we have a last look at the tasting notes before we jump onto the
tobacco?
So there, big cherry, pepper, spice,
salted caramel,
all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I can get that salted caramel thing because again, it's those tannins provide that slightly savoury edge to it. But cherry, wonderful. Yeah, I really like the first one, but I can see that there's almost a narrative forming throughout this tasting. Again, like you may have actually planned it.
Something like that.
Who'd have thought that?
So, what we're going to do with this wine, ladies and gents, is we're going to do a quick introduction. So this is Vitas, and this is from Toro. So this is, we'll find Tinto de Toro. Been around since 2003, and just make this bold, rich style of wine that I really, really like. So for those of you who joined us for a while, you may well know that I'm a WSET educator. But what you may not know is the young gentleman set to my left is also a WSET educator. So
it's true.
So what we're going to do with this is, I know there's a lot of people who kind of join us and they're doing WSET, whether it's level 2, level 3, diploma. So if you're well past this, hopefully it's a nice little refresher.
Yep.
If you're getting into this and it's a bit too geeky, my apologies, because that's the way of the world.
That's what we do.
But what we're going to do is we're going to take this wine from scratch and we're going to do a little WSET SAT on it.
I like this because I haven't been prepared for this.
I know you haven't.
So I turned up like 2 minutes before we went live, and you were like, we're going to do a tasting now. That's great. It's like doing my education course all over again.
But we've got it up on the screen there for you as we kind of work through it. So if you want to kind of pop your notes into the chat, we'll see how your notes compare to Lee's notes, and I'm just going to be quiet for a second.
Fantastic.
So I'll give you a clue, Lee. For the first one, between white rosé and red, it's definitely red.
It's definitely red, isn't it? Because I was going to go with deep amber for this. Look at that. That's deep purple, isn't it? Deep purple. I can't see my thumb behind it. So one of the ways I assess clarity, some people do it sort of looking above the glass and looking down. I hold it 45-degree angle and put my finger behind it. I can't really see my finger behind this, which means it's deep, because if I could see my finger, it wouldn't be deep. And yeah, I'm going deep purple. Is there any smoke on this? Any smoke on the
water?
Smoke on the Tempranillo? That would be a terrible song to try and shoehorn Tempranillo into. But I think, for me, this is deep purple. What's that telling me? Warm climate, probably a relatively young wine. I think we said it's 18. So as Tempranillo goes, that's not especially old. Just a little bit of age to it. Now, intensity. Let's have a go. I'm giving it a good swirl. Bring it close to my nose. Because I'm doing level 2, so I've only got the 3 to choose from. I'm going pronounced on that.
I would agree with you.
I'm here.
It definitely, the fruit just comes out, smacks you in the face. Absolutely.
So I do it. So trying to work out that intensity is I sort of go, if I can smell it from over here, it's pronounced, and then I go lower down the chain the closer I get. And if I've got to put my nose in and Columbo around, looking for the evidence, then that would be very light intensity. But that's definitely pronounced. And I think so. We talk about fruit in primary, secondary, tertiary. I think this has got the whole smash. Not
Absolutely.
the whole smash, the whole smash.
Absolutely, and I think this is what I said with Tempranillo. It's a great grape to do a WSET thing, because sometimes you'll do something and someone's getting into this and not done it before. I go, so what's tertiary? Well, I can tell you what tertiary is, but there's no example of it here. So when you get this. No, I have no idea. Well, there's none. That's it. Yeah. Nope, none.
You only know what that is by experiencing it, right? Somebody can tell you what it means, but until you experience it. So primary fruit. For me, a lot of cherry, some black raspberry. I've got some plum fruit in there, a bit of blackberry, a bit of damsons. There's quite a lot of fruit in there. Secondary, which is our winemaking, vanilla, clove, smoke, toast.
So winemaking is kind of use of barrels or choice of malolactic fermentation. So it's the things that the winemaker will do, whether they decide they're going to put it in stainless steel or put it in a French oak barrel or an American oak barrel, or however long they're going to do it for it. So those secondary characteristics are winemaking techniques and winemaking decisions.
And tertiary, which I'll tell you what I get, and then Jamie can explain it because he did a really good job of that. Tertiary, tobacco, leather, more smoke, some dried fruit, a little bit of dried fruit in there. A little bit of earthiness. It's not fungal, but it's got that sort of gamey thing going on. Wood smoke, kind of pencil leady slightly thing, which would tie into secondary. Warm spice. Where's my tertiary coming from?
So tertiary is your developmental characteristics. So when you have a very young wine, very few tertiary characteristics. So you need to have lots of fruit at the beginning to be able to get lots of tertiary as the wine develops. And it's not about one's better than the other. A lot of people go, "Oh, wine that's got a lot of development." That's what scores high with critics and magazines and all that kind of good stuff. But it's about what you like. So if you like a very, very fruit-forward wine, drink this right now. And what will happen is this big, dark, plummy fruit that we've talked about will become more and more of the smoky tobacco, those kind of things, as it ages. So if you like more smoke or more tobacco or more leather, leave it for another few years. And if you like just a little bit more, save it for a little bit of time. So there's not a right or wrong answer. There's a right or wrong answer about when the winemaker thinks the wine might be in best condition. But I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, and in the chat correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you do.
I don't think that I've ever seen a bottle of wine that says, drink this on July the 12th, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. They usually say drink between 5 and 15 years or 6 and 8 years.
It tends to be quite a big window.
There's a level of there's a large margin for error on these things.
It's almost like that as a consumer of a product, you have a choice in determining when you want to consume it and if you like consuming it that way.
Absolutely. So let's have a quick look at the tasting notes, and we can just kind of run through them and go, what parts are, what are we finding that are the primaries, what are the secondaries, and what are the tertiaries? So obviously we've got the dark cherry, the black cherry, the plum. That's all your primary. We've then got some warm spices and your nutmeg and your spice. That's going to be your secondary from your oak barrels. And then we've got the smoke.
Mushroom in there.
The mushroom, which is your tertiary.
That's a tertiary one.
And peppery's an interesting one because it's a little bit of both. You get pepperiness from the grape, so it's a primary flavour anyway, but it becomes more pronounced as a tertiary kind of thing, and it can also come from the barrel. So pepper is I
think pepper comes from Rotundo, I believe, but that will be an Alex Taylor sort of thing, and I'm not Alex Taylor. I'm not doing that. Fantastic. I'm not prepared to commit to that.
Fantastic. So once we've done our little tasting on the nose, we kind of get into the palate, and you'll see down here we've got our clusters, and I think clusters can help people a lot because there's a lot of times you pick up a glass of wine. I know what that is, but I can't put my finger on it. And then someone like me or Leo go peaches, and everyone goes, yeah, peaches. But if we can put these things into little groups and, start off, is it red fruit? Is it dark fruit? Is it citrus? Is it whatever? Once we hit those kind of things, we can then dive into that. So if we're red fruit, we can go, oh, which red fruit could it be?
It's a decision tree, right? So your decision tree firstly is got a red one, I might have red fruit, and then you break red fruit down. You go, well, what red fruits are there? I'm going to take it ever so slightly beyond the level 2 because this is just something I do. So you might go, okay, strawberries are red fruit, cherries are red fruit, but plum could be a red fruit. And then you go, okay, I've got 3 tasting terms that I can use. But here's a way of broadening your tasting terminology should you wish to. You can go, well, I've got strawberry. What kind of strawberry is it? Is it like a fresh strawberry you've just picked? Is it like strawberry ice cream? Is it like the strawberries that you get on those like little strawberry tarts? So suddenly you take one flavour and find a different way of articulating that flavour, and you can
Sorry
really
to interrupt.
build.
There's your tasting note for this. Christmas cake spices. I like that.
But that's a way of opening up your tasting terminology that you can use. It's a decision tree, but those clusters are really helpful. They're, like yourself, I've been doing this a long time. Every single one I taste, I revert to that. I go through the clusters.
Yeah. And you can go down. You can go down and down and down. And you can get into this rabbit hole. You can go lemon. Well, is it lemon peel, lemon juice, lemon pith? Is it baked, stewed, candied, fresh? Is it confected, lemon sweets you had when you were a kid? And not many people want to go that far.
No, which is fine.
Some people do, but it's just that kind of, if you do though, if you know you can go that far, you go there.
That's the approach.
And it is tasting wine. Vocabulary is tough because when you eat an apple, you know what it tastes like because you've got an apple in your hand. You go, oh, and we don't often pay attention to what it actually tastes like unless it doesn't taste as it should. And they'll go, oh, that's not quite right. Otherwise, it's just muscle memory and it's done. And wine, we have all these tastes that we know before. And it's the one thing in the world that we describe how it tastes by talking about other things. You don't go, chicken tastes like badger, squirrel, cow. You go, it tastes like chicken. We know what that tastes like. We don't often go, unless you're the wine geek, you don't pick up and go, that tastes like Tempranillo. No. You go, that tastes like plum and spice and cherry and all these other things.
And those things, they're slightly intangible. So when you're learning this and when you're starting out doing this, somebody can taste the wine and say, oh, I can taste plums. That can be quite difficult to access because it's not a physical. It's not I can go, hang on a minute. It's when you taste that wine in your mouth, it's that bit that's right there. You can't do that. So that can take a bit of practice. So I always say to people when they're trying to build up the tasting skills is just be smelling constantly all the time when you do your shopping. And so don't just pick up that bunch of bananas and put them in the tray, pick it up and smell. I get lots of weird looks when I'm in Waitrose. No. I'm lying, I'm north and I don't go into Waitrose. They won't let me in. But when I'm in the supermarket, I get loads of weird looks because when I'm buying that fruit, I smell it to really lock those sensations away.
No, it's really interesting. So this is Toro. Toro is a tiny little region, not very many wineries there at all. But what I've liked about Toro is I used to, back in the day, I used to import some Toro into the USA, and the winemakers all get together and do barrel sampling blind with each other, and basically critique each other's wine. But they could go, oh, this isn't very good, and then look at, oh shit, that's mine. But what I say, my top tip for Spanish wine is you are very, very unlikely to get a bad bottle of Toro because they all work together. It's looking stylistically, and you pick it up and it's great. But
they're trying to build a greater whole. So I think there's about 6,000 hectares here.
So there's a good point here.
What have we got?
Better balance, better alcohol integration.
Let's have a look. What's the alcohol on this? 15. So this
15,
is a step up again.
Bigger still.
Perhaps more balanced. I agree with that. I think that integration is there. So this is a hefty wine. There's oak here. There's tertiary stuff going on that we've discussed, the sort of smoke and tobacco and leather and things like that. 15%, but it is really balanced. It's something I think you said earlier about making these wines, and you can make higher alcohol wines. Everything has to sit together really well. That is absolutely singing. And when we tasted them through just before we went live, this really stood out for me. That's fabulous.
I think it's a great drop of juice. But I think what's important here is these three wines are not a million miles apart geographically.
No.
They're all made with the same grape. They're all the same vintage, but all vastly different. And I think if you wanted to generally summarise that, if you want wine with a touch more elegance, Rioja.
Yep.
If you want fruit-driven and spice,
Ribera.
We want to go to Ribera. And if we want power, we go to Toro.
So it is quite an old region. And King Alfredo said of this region, this was like in the 14th century, he said, "Tengo un toro que me da vino y un león que me lo bebe," which I believe in Spanish means I have a bull that makes wine and a lion that eats babies. Actually, I don't know what that's got to do with anything. Que lo bebe. Oh no, that means to drink. Because this is in the wider region of Castile and Leon. And he said, I have a bull that makes wine and a lion that drinks it.
Ah, there we are.
So there you go. I spent a lot of time trying to memorise a Spanish quote.
Yet not eating.
For
nothing
no
to
reason
do, nothing,
at all.
But nothing to do with eating
the line
babies.
about eating a baby, I thought it was really funny. Made my wife laugh, and she's a Spanish speaker, but and she doesn't normally laugh at my jokes. But there we go. But that is
stunning.
You know, it is powerful. But as our taste just said, you know, it's so balanced. It's so together. I have a feeling that you could kind of get through a lot of that bottle before you realise just how hefty it actually is at 15%, because it handles that so beautifully. That's magnificent.
Absolutely.
Good choice.
So, you know, we're not putting a poll up for it. We'll do the poll at the end. But just in the chat, any favourites, any choices on wine 1, 2, or 3 as a favourite for our Spanish contingent before we jump into the rest of the world?
So the rest of the world make Tempranillo.
Absolutely.
Who'd have thunk it?
I don't know. So, where is it? So yeah. But if we look at where else we've got, you know, we see Spain and Portugal. South of France makes a little bit. Australia, New Zealand, South America, bit in South America.
Yeah.
There's some stuff in the US. Very little bit in Canada, which is interesting, like Okanaga.
Okay.
Some interesting stuff. But, you know, most of them are kind of trials that they're making something else. I don't think there's many people out there that are purely growing Tempranillo. They're doing something else. And they've got a little bit of Tempranillo here and there. But you're seeing, you know, there's a little bit of movement around the world. But if you just look at the map and see how small Spain is and the fact that 90% of the world's Tempranillo is there, there's not huge amounts anywhere else. But because Spain does such a good job, if you're going to try and do it somewhere else, you've probably got to be quite good, haven't you?
There was a conversation earlier about if you're covering somebody else's song, right, you should cover that song and do it your way rather than try and do exactly what they did. Otherwise, you're just repeating what's already been done. So if you're going to take a grape variety and transpose it, you want to do it with your stamp on it rather than, we're just trying to make what is already being made somewhere. There's a wider, more nuanced conversation here with various styles of wine being made around the world. But I think there's also a commercial element to this, right? So you look at the grapes that are more widely planted in the rest of the world than, say, Tempranillo. So it's planted in other places but in very, very small amounts. The grape varieties, we know that consumers look for Cabernet Sauvignon, they look for Merlot, and they know Malbec, for example. So we can see why producers might go, actually, if I plant that, commercially, I've got less work to do in trying to get it to the end consumer because they will have a familiarity with that variety. Whereas with Tempranillo, that's not necessarily always been the case, although we might see that changing because, as we said, you know, people are becoming more aware of it.
No, absolutely. But, you know, you have a little look through the chat, you know, there's some votes for 1, 2, 3, a little bit of blend. So it just shows that not one wine is better, it's the different wine for different people.
I love that. I remember being asked once, you know, what's better, French or American oak? So, what flavours do you like? What do you like to do?
You're well integrated with alcohol.
I have spent a lot of time with alcohol. Got to know it quite well on first name terms. So could we say I think it's fair to say we occasionally have a fallout. It's usually on a Sunday morning. I haven't figured out why that would be the case, but yeah, fairly well integrated with it. I can stop anytime I want. It's fine. Give it up.
Fantastic. So let's get wine number 4 into the glass.
There we go.
And before we jump in and discuss it, we've got a quick video from Warren, who's the winemaker at Trinity Hills. So I'm going to pop this on so you can talk a little bit about it. It came over to me last minute from New Zealand as an iPhone thing. So it's a little bit distorted and a little bit echoey from here. And that's the joy of sitting in cellars. But I'm going to pop this on and
keeping it real.
Drink and listen.
Hi, my name's Warren Gibson from Trinity Hill Winery in Hawke's Bay, New Zealand. We're looking at a Gimlet Gravels Tempranillo grown in our very stony soils of the Gimlet Gravels in Hawke's Bay. We've been growing and making Tempranillo since the year 2000. Our first wine was 2002, and we love this as an alternative variety for us. We think it's the most reliable red grape variety we grow. always gets ripe, always makes delicious wine. And what we see mostly is that beautiful dark fruit, some red licorice, some spice, quite its own personality. On the palate, very versatile, has quite a unique tannin structure, and is very food friendly, as you might expect, but also delicious by the glass. Cheers.
So fantastic. Words from the man himself.
You can't get any better than that.
Absolutely. So we are in New Zealand and we're Hawke's Bay, Gimlet Gravel. So we are at the southern bit of the North Island. Yeah, I'm just doing maths. North Sally. Yeah, exactly.
It sort of does that.
So you've got Hawke's Bay, and then Gimlet Gravels is this very, very special place in the world of winemaking that it just can't be repeated. It's nowhere else in the world. And when you talk about terroir and you talk about sense of place, Gimlet Gravels has to be one of those things that you go, it's like nowhere else. They do a lot of Bordeaux, great, a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon there. They do some of the Rhone varietals, some really, really good Syrah out of Gimlet Gravels, and also some Tempranillo, which is new to me. I'd not had it before I started doing some research on Tempranillo and where else in the world we could get it from. And found that Trinity Hills had a Tempranillo. I was like, can you get me some to taste? And I thought it was epic. So I thought I would share it with everybody else.
I'm thrilled you got it in because I've been drinking quite a bit of Trinity Hills of late because I've come across a supply of some aged Syrah, and I think it's wonderful. But I didn't know they're Tempranillo. But what I do know about Tempranillo in New Zealand is New Zealand has a shade over 41,600 hectares of planted grapes, of which about 64% is Sauvignon Blanc, which won't surprise anyone. Of that 41,600 hectares, give or take, in New Zealand, only 19 hectares are Tempranillo, and the majority of that 19 hectares is in Hawke's Bay.
Heard it here first.
Thank you very much.
I'm
here all week, etc.
So Trinity Hills is quite a fun story, isn't it? A traveling winemaker turned up at a restaurant in London, spoke to the proprietor with a couple of glasses. I think it was his Chardonnay, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Chardonnay. And this is in the late 90s. Tasted the glass, tasted another glass after a couple of glasses or six. And there was a lot of stuff in the middle, but I'm going to cut all that out. They decided to buy some land and plant in Hawke's Bay.
Why would you not? Lots of reasons why you wouldn't, to be honest.
Yeah, go and do it.
This was what, late 90s, I think?
Yeah, 97.
So, like 1997, Hawke's Bay wasn't exactly a thing. If we talk about commercial, so if you're going to, if somebody said, I'm going to go and plant some vineyards in Mendoza, you go, well, fair enough, that's a massive concern. Everybody knows what it is. In the late 90s, wasn't a lot of Hawke's Bay wine being sold anywhere outside New Zealand, right? I mean, a little bit, but it wasn't. Whereas today, as you were saying, we know it's a really special place. Has this unique terroir, and the soil was kind of unveiled during some floods in 1860, and it's totally unique, and we get it. Nearly 25 years ago, we didn't know that. So, it just shows you the dangers of Chardonnay, I think.
Yeah. So I'll tell a little secret here. It's not all Tempranillo. You're going home, aren't you? It's got 12%.
This is a Tempranillo tasting, ladies and gentlemen.
It's yes, it's got a 12% Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's got a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon on there, which gives it a little bit of that greenness, a little bit of more, that structure in there. But I think there's been some bits put in there, it's got some elegance in there, which you get from that greenness, that herbaceousness that you're getting from the cab. And it's nice to have that because sometimes people just blend stuff in to go, I'm going to blend something in, I'm going to stick something in there. But there's a reason behind this, and it's being picked up in the thing. It gives it that elegance. It gives it that kind of...
Do you know what? What I really admire about that is Cabernet Sauvignon's quite a dominant variety. I was at tasting earlier this week of some Tuscan wines where they were putting a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon into that, and it was like 20% of the overall blend, but it was really dominant in that blend. It's not dominant here. You can pick it out. You're right. But you don't stick your nose and go, oh, it's definitely got Cabernet in it.
No,
it's so well.
There's something there, and you go, is it Bordeaux-y? Is it this? And then it's really. Do you know how you can tell there's 12% Cabernet Sauvignon in there?
Does it tell you on the label?
Tells me on the tech sheets.
I was going to say, I wonder how high these vineyards are. Well, they don't tell you. Fish techniques, wonderful things. All producers should have them easily available on their website. Any producers watching this, sort it out, please. The amount of time I spend looking at fish techniques. Anyway, what I love about this, having gone through the 3 wines from Spain, which have all got punch to them in some way, shape, or form, is this is just really exotic and aromatic, and there's like violet and jasmine and floral stuff going on all over the top. But then you get that lovely pure fruit. This feels like a real reset. I think that the first 3 we did showed a real narrative of Tempranillo in Spain. This allows us to kind of step back out of that and almost start again. I think the nose on this, I just think, is so aromatic and inviting.
So I just want to chuck this out here as we go through. Yes, has there been dark fruit in all the tasting notes? There has been. Mm-hmm. But each set of tasting notes has been vastly different. You know, we've got licorice front and center here. Previously, we've had smoke and warm spices. Previously, we've had plum. Previously, we've had this. And I think this is the joy of doing a tasting like this, that you go, holy moly, it's not just here's another Tempranillo.
We've kind of had it down as a bit of a one-trick pony, it's probably fair to say. I'm overstating that for dramatic effect, but we've had it down as it does this. We're starting to see here just 4 wines in.
But I think that's important for wine in general, and for people listening at home. These blanket statements about wine, people go, I don't like Chardonnay, I only drink French wine, I don't like Riesling, and those kind of things.
People say that. I don't like Riesling. Who are these people?
Oh, well.
I will seek them out.
You will find them.
I'll go like Liam Neeson in that film.
But I think that's what's important, that we go, you know, Tempranillo might not be the thing for you, but you can see how there's such a different range as we go through. But yeah, Gimlet Gravels, you know, Warren, who was on that chat, he's been the winemaker with them since 1997. You know, he's been there since 35 years.
35 years.
Look at that.
35. That's how far. That's a long time in one place, right? And you don't stay in one place that long unless you love what you're doing, especially winemaking. A lot of winemakers tend to be fairly peripatetic and wander about, and then go, I've made wine here for so long, I've really enjoyed it, and then they move on because they want maybe a new challenge or try something new. But to have that belief in the land and what you're doing in your vines, it's a long time making one wine.
It is.
You know, for
a set of wines. Yeah, absolutely. But I just think this once again showcases that it's all different styles of Tempranillo. You go, what does New Zealand make?
Yeah.
Well, it does this as well, which is kind of cool.
That's the most enjoyable nose of the 4 for me, because I think because it's the most different of the 4 wines we've had so far, and with all that aromatic stuff popping.
Absolutely, and food with this, I think, you know, it's a little bit more. I think the other ones have been much more kind of like big grill steak done. I think this cries out for something a little bit more elegant, a little bit more. I don't know, a little bit more. I don't even know the word I'm looking for. Less robust, more kind of.
Doesn't just have to be a big chunk of it. Do you know what I was thinking that this would? There's a bit of tannin to it, but if you had like really good tuna steaks, again, grill them up a little bit, it could work with that. So venison Wellington was what I had in mind.
So I'm guessing Daria is not a fan of this wine because she really, really doesn't like licorice, and therefore.
I'm with you. I'm doing that for the camera. I don't like that. I don't like licorice, but I like Guinness.
Hunter's chicken, I like that with the barbecue sauce.
Ooh, yeah,
barbecue sauce, a little bit of spice, a little bit of smoke.
A little bit of piquance to it.
Yeah, well done, Neil. Good call. I like that. Yeah. Jonty's in for a bit of quail. Bit small for my liking.
Jonty's delivering so far. Small game generally. Yeah, I mean, you know, you're not doing much to put us off coming to yours for dinner afterwards, Jonty. Small game could work. Bit of duck.
Yeah.
Duck with like plum, because of plumminess.
Yeah, the duck goes with that richness. Yeah. Duck with hoisin and something like that would be good.
That working.
Absolutely.
Just make
I say this, like every show we do this, we talk about food and I'm like,
I'm absolutely starving.
Exactly. But there we go. Anyway, should we run, well, I say round the corner. It's not really round the corner, is it? But
get that
in the world. So this I'm excited for.
Yes.
And I'm excited for you to try this.
I cannot
because we have some old Tempranillo. So we are into Barossa. And once again, it's interesting because you wouldn't expect Barossa to be the place to grow Tempranillo after everything that we've said previously, that it needs sunshine. Barossa has sunshine.
Yes.
Does it like lots of heat?
No, it wants
moderating.
pretty warm.
Is Barossa, when we talk about the big 16% Shirazes, where do they all come from? Barossa.
It's a big hot place.
And there is your key. It is a big place. So not all of it has to be as hot as everything else. Barossa, not much different to the size of the UK, really. And, it can be a very, very different temperature in Bournemouth to in Newcastle year round. Yeah. So what we've got to look at is these things. When we talk about, I think sometimes with the old world, we talk about tiny little regions like this one little vineyard in Burgundy and this one, and then we go, Australia. Forgetting that Australia is the size of North America or Europe.
It's got like 140,000 hectares, right? Give us across 68, 69 wine regions.
Exactly. And you go, Australia. It's not all the same. And also, Barossa is not all the same.
And you've got some altitude as well in Barossa, right? You can go a little bit higher up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you've got lots of options. Yes, you can make a general statement and go, yeah, it's hot and it makes 16% Shiraz, which will blow your head off. And some of them are absolutely delicious. Yeah. However, they have these little parcels that are able to do it. And this is Sons of Eden. Two winemakers, Corey Ryan and Stephen Callum, make this together. And they've been making this since about 2000?
I think it's right,
right around, we call it turn of the century.
Turn of the century. That makes it sound very distinctive and established.
It does indeed. And what is great about it, and I like this, it's called Sons of Eden because the two of them worked for Eden Valley Vineyards previously. So therefore they came together and it's a little homage to where they started and what they did. And this is their Celine Tempranillo, 2013 vintage.
Now, Celine, she was the goddess of the moon, wasn't she? So is this pretty full? Full.
I'm not doing that.
No?
I'm not playing full name with you.
This is perfect drink if you're sorting your car out and if you've been doing a bit of waxing, which you wouldn't do if it was waning, would you?
Okay.
Yeah, I said I had quite a few of these prepared.
Simon, I don't have the numbers on the tech sheets RS. I would be surprised if it had anything more than about 2 or 3 grams in there.
I would think, bro. I can just know this. It feels like there's a bit of sweetness. So I think that's probably more in the fruit expression than actual sugar. But I'd be surprised if the sugar was particularly high. We'll see if we can find it. It's interesting. We're talking about Barossa and it's hot, and obviously there's diversity in that. This is stepping back to 13.5.
More importantly, you were talking about proper tech sheets on websites, winemakers.
Yeah.
Where's your sugar?
Yeah. We need these stats. TA.
I've got acidity. The acidity's. No, that's not that one. Have I got Sons of Eden?
He's looking at the wrong text sheet.
No, I'm just going to go Sons of Eden for you. See if I've got the sugar on that for you.
But again, different again, and this is older. So we're talking about tertiary. This has got for me.
No, I don't have sugar. Just acidity at 6, but 6.1, which is vicious.
Yeah, that is punchy.
So
I've got my teeth enamel on short, so that's fine.
So I just absolutely love this wine. I think it's got elegance. I think it's got power. I think it's just.
I mean, that's like a hug in a glass, isn't it? It just keeps bringing you in and giving you more. Now, interestingly, because this is Tempranillo in Australia, and there's sort of a link with the previous wine, which was New Zealand. So Australia's got about 140,000 hectares-ish. Of which 760 are Tempranillo. So they've got a region that's got a lot more than's growing in New Zealand. But in terms of their exports of Tempranillo, most of their exports go to New Zealand of Australian Tempranillo. And then the second largest export market for Australian Tempranillo is the UK. So, Kiwis and us, we've got a taste for it. This is just showing what what wine can do as it ages.
John, with that sherbet thing, it's got that kind of like that candied fruit, doesn't it? I know what you mean. It's got that candied fruit, and then that acidity is. So I'm going with the sherbet thing. Where it says, you remember like those dib dab lollies? It's like that. It's got that tingliness on the tongue, which is where you've got that mega high acidity. Is what's bringing that all in.
You've got blackcurrant sorbet there as well. I like that.
It does. It's got this acidity. It's got this like zipping. Can you believe that's like 10 years old almost?
So fresh. You've got all the herbs sitting around it as well.
Because so if we take this, if this was Rioja and this was 10 years old, it would just be an oak bomb, wouldn't it? It would just be oak and vanilla and dark. It would be stewed fruit and vanilla. It would be blackberry pie. And this is like blackcurrant sorbet with that zippiness and that life. Just
like really, I think the first one I said sort of like it's a wine for quenching your thirst. This is doing the same. It's that freshness and how clean it is. That's absolutely stunning. And again, would you 10-year-old Australian Tempranillo?
No, so this is done half and half between old oak and stainless steel.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that little bit of roundness from there, which allows it to develop, but then stainless steel keeps it nice and fresh.
So what else we got? Blackcurrant, damsons.
Oh, fins on a cheese and charcuterie platter with manchegos made some pecorino.
Yeah, some cheese with that, a little bit of that gaminess and that
saltiness, that like a really good aged English cheddar with that like crumbly saltiness.
You can have that twang to it, wouldn't you? 5 is our new favourite.
Thanks, Ingrid. Thanks, Phil. That's lovely. Good to hear. Good to hear.
Again, so we're 5 wines in now. 5 different wines.
5 different tasting notes.
There's nothing repetitive here. It's
a bit Tempranillo heavy.
It's very Tempranillo, isn't it? But with a side order of Cabernet Sauvignon. But there's you're not tasting one of these wines and goes, it just tastes like one that I've had previously. You can see definition. You can see difference. You can see the fact that Tempranillo has a lot more to say than perhaps we've known or given it credit for in the past. That's incredibly expressive.
I almost don't want to go on to wine number 6. I'd be quite happy to call it a night and drink the rest of this bottle with you.
Cheers, thanks for joining. Fine.
I think this is absolutely decadent.
It's an absolute cracker.
I don't. Usually, I try and be very even keel about my favourite wine of the night, but I'm kind of a bit overexcited by this one right now. So, Sons of Eden. So, let's do that. Should we have a last little look at the tasting notes?
Yeah, let's see.
So again, snacks are great. You guys in the chat are fantastic tonight. Thank you very much.
They're all over it.
Yeah, once again, but this is all, it's all the fruit forward, like the smoky bits, much more in the background of this one. It's still there. So, you can see there's a style that Tempranillo runs through, but what is pronounced jumps around a little bit, which is great.
Wonderful. Which is ultimately what we wanted to achieve, right?
Exactly. And once again, made to make your mouth water, as Colin's put in here. And that is all about having this. And I don't know if I've had in my life many red wines that are that old that still have that acidity, and but without, some of them have the acidity, but they've still got so much tannin in there that it's ready to drink and kept that much acidity 10 years old. It's absolutely insane.
6.1. I mean, that's punchy, but it's not over the top either. It's in exactly the right place, and it keeps everything chugging. That's the engine of this wine, isn't it? Perhaps that's an absolute blinder.
So,
who would have thought?
Great job, Barossa Valley.
Well done.
Okay.
Those Aussies.
Fantastic. So, hard act to follow all of a sudden, isn't it?
But if there's a man that can follow in that,
there is a man who can.
We know who it could be. It
will be Mr. Karim Moussi. So, wine number 6. He says as he tries to get that to sit in focus. It's not playing nicely.
So it's got a white label as well, so it's quite reflective.
Exactly. But, so we are Karim Moussi, and just let me pop the tasting notes on for you so we can continue on with your lovely, lovely tasting notes. So this is Tempranillo by Karim Moussi. For those of you who have been with us from the very, very beginning, I've got a soft spot for Karim, Condor Wines, who imports his stuff and all that kind of stuff. The reason we almost got here was because of Karim Moussi. When we first opened Tring Winery behind us and we had our 36 days of lockdown, before we went into lockdown, when we were still able to open, we did a wine tasting, and Lee, who thought we sounded like a new cool thing, could I come and say hello, decided he was going to pop in and ended up being behind the bar pouring wines for these wine tastings. But Karim was meant to be coming over to visit. And then with the pending lockdown, he decided to cancel his trip, but we kept the tasting. And he did us a bunch of epic videos, like direct from the vineyard. And we did kind of a half pour, half intro of the wine, half Karim on the big screen talking about wine, which is where we realised we could do wine tastings and wine events without physically having to have the winemaker in the room. So a lot of love for Karim for A, helping us get that off the ground in the first place, and B, making fantastic wine. And I was lucky enough, he actually got to travel maybe a month or so ago, and he popped in to say hi, so we kind of caught up and talked about what was going on in the world. But he's one of these people in the wine industry that he wants to be that rock, and he's like, we act like rock stars, we drink great wines, we have fine dinners, and then at the end of the month, we have no money. So we just it's all a farce. We all pretend we're doing all right. We're there, and he does phenomenal. The South American varietals you expect. He does phenomenal Malbec, phenomenal Semillon. He does some great blends. He does a blend that's got a little bit of Tempranillo in called Las Poetas, which we've done on a tasting previously. And then he does this. And this is his Alto Cedro Año Zero, because they started in 2000. So that was the first vintage, and that's the name for that. And this is his 100% Tempranillo from La Consulta. What is cool about this? You would say Uco Valley, hot or cold? Quite hot.
Quite hot.
So great place for Tempranillo.
No, because it doesn't like it too hot, does it? No.
But kind of like I'm leading you down the garden path again, aren't I? Would we potentially have any places in the Uco Valley that were a little bit cooler?
If only there was somewhere in the Uco Valley that was like 1,100 meters above sea level, like La Consulta happens to be. So, what's great about the Valle de Uco, the Uco Valley, it's the cool place to be in Mendoza. Cool in terms of temperatures, but cool as in it's on trend, which is something I've never known about being on trend. I'm demonstrably not that thing. But where this is growing is 1,100 meters above sea level, so you get a huge drop in temperature because you're so high up. So whereas in the Maipú, which is like 500-600 meters above sea level, which is further north and east from here, that might be 40 degrees in the summer. Here it's going to be like 30, 32. So that's quite a drop. And then you get that diurnal swing that we were talking about earlier with certain areas. So, it's nice and warm in the day, but then it really drops the temperature at night, so it slows down the development. So whilst we perceive Argentina and Mendoza as being really hot, Uco Valley, particularly where this is from, La Consulta, is the place to be, 1,100 meters above sea level. And it's sort of sandwiched, so where La Consulta sits, you've got the Tunujan River that comes through, so that provides all your meltwater coming down from the Andes. And then just to the southwest of that, you've got Paraje Altamira, which is reasonably well known. And then to the northwest of that, you've got Vista Flores. So you've kind of got this holy triumvirate of three really key areas. Excuse me. And the Tempranillo here from La Consulta. I think that these vines have a bit of age to them. It's like 30 odd.
Yeah, 35-ish years.
What a place to be.
And what's interesting about this is he's taken a style and given it a level of respect. So 99.9% of Kerim's wine is done in either stainless steel, concrete, or when he uses oak, French oak, except the Tempranillo, because a lot of Rioja, especially older style of Rioja, is done in American oak. So he does this particular wine in American oak to give it that richness, that roundness, that vanilla. I think it's definitely the most jammy of all the styles. I think it's probably sweetest fruited and probably the most just drinkable of the ones we've had tonight. And this is, do I think it's once again, is it a food wine? Yeah, there's some stuff you can have with it. But this is the bottle that I just, it's Tuesday night, open it, drink it, get on with it.
This down, right? The interesting thing about Tempranillo in Argentina, obviously the Spanish took grapes to Argentina, Tempranillo is a Spanish grape. Historically, this was one of the most planted grapes in Argentina. Today, it's the 5th most planted red grape variety. So obviously got Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Bernarda, Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah. Then, I was going to say Sangiovese, it's not. Then Tempranillo. Tempranillo.
So more Tempranillo than Merlot?
So there's more Tempranillo than Merlot.
Wow.
It's the 8th most planted overall. So in the white stakes, you've got Pedro Ximénez, which is a type of Criollo, not the same Pedro Ximénez that you find in sherry. Then you've got Dorontes, then you've got Chardonnay. So it's the 8th most planted grape variety in Argentina overall. It weighs in at 5,500 hectares. Argentina's got about 200,000. So, it's still quite a small player in the, like we were saying, Australia's got 760 or something. That's still a really small player in the total hectarage. But there's a long history of Tempranillo in Argentina, and it's fallen by the wayside with Malbec and Bernarda. But that is so gluggable. So jammy, chewy, sweet.
Yeah.
That you could just smash a bottle up, couldn't you?
Oh, very easily, very easily.
And
candy, black cherry, red cherry, plum jam, candy, jam, blackcurrant, Chewits, eh?
Oh, Chewits.
Chewits, that's back in the day, isn't it?
I can't remember the last time I had a Chewit. Can you still buy Chewits? Jam, I like jam. I think Paul Weller would
jammy,
like this.
Balanced, light-ish. I like that, Magda, because it's that very, very drinkable style. I think it's
It's almost kind of the least structured of all of them, but that's not to say it doesn't have structure. but all the others really played with structure. This has the softer structure, the most of it. It's not hefty tannins, but they're softer, rounder tannins.
For drinkable, it's the most approachable of all the wines.
definitely.
Very approachable.
It's wonderful.
Someone who's not had Tempranillo before and wants, just drinks their normal red wine. This is a good get into Tempranillo wine.
Absolutely.
So, but I think what is key as we finish up this last wine before we pop the prices up and we go into favourite wines and all that kind of stuff is it could have been really quite boring and done in about 3.5 minutes if all Tempranillos were the same, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
But I think we've done it with a grape that's a little bit different and it's got it where it's at. B, I think people need to realise that's how the wine world is. Don't get stuck on Chardonnay is Chardonnay and Riesling is Riesling and this is it. This. And I'm not saying that someone who doesn't like Tempranillo will suddenly love a Tempranillo, but if they don't, I'm sure out of these 6 wines, they could find one if you were having red wine that they'd happily have a glass of. Maybe they're not going to buy a case of it or whatever, but they'll find something that they quite happily drink. And I think, that's...
Don't just write it off.
Yeah, so Ian's put, does this need to be drunk young? I think this is designed to drink. It's, it's nothing's going to happen with it. If you want to hold it for 5 years, it's going to... But, you'll get a little bit more structure out of it. But I think, if you're looking for that more... Rioja-y, Tempranillo-y kind of feel. Grab a Rioja. Don't grab this bottle and try and age it. It's not going to turn into what you would hope it to turn into.
It's not going to turn into one of those.
Yeah, it's not going to change into anything magical by laying it down for 10 years.
It's not a gremlin. So,
but it's not going to go bad. So, but yeah, once again, some great tasting notes. Once again, vastly different. Again, lots of different things.
6 very different tasting notes. So 6 very different wines. And I think this tasting has showed, as you've just alluded to, you can't try one thing once and then write it off. And in fact, you can't try one thing several times and write it off because there's always, the world of wine is big enough that there's always somebody somewhere doing something new with it.
Oh, absolutely. Right. I'm going to flick this on to... Oh, no. Go back. Wine of the night. Oh, after all that, it seems the El Cotto seems so long ago now, doesn't it? So,
did we have an El Cotto? I don't remember that.
We did. It was about 850 metres above sea level.
Was it about 850? Yeah.
So
I need to make that clearer, I think.
We get the votes in now. In the chat, very quickly, Lee's bought his guitar. If anybody wants a song, after we did Drinking Some Great Rioja for Discoveries, he's got his guitar. So if anyone wants a song, let us know and we'll do it. Otherwise, we'll leave you be. So how are these votes coming in? Let's have a look.
What was your? I think I know your answer, but what was? If you take the Aussie one out, what was your favourite of the remaining?
Well, I think I'm going to talk around in circles here as I usually do. I think a lot of it depends on the occasion. If I'm sitting down and having dinner, the Ribera is probably going to be the wine, or depending what I'm having, maybe the Trinity Hills. If I'm just drinking, that's my book. But, and then the Rioja is as classic gets. And, it's all, and the Torres is just magic. So it is all about the right wine for the right time. I think, when we get to it and pop the prices up, there'll be different wines for different occasions as well. But I think the standout wine, just because it's different and unexpected, was the Aussie.
Yeah.
For drinkable, that one. The Spanish wines, I just think they're classic for what they are regionally.
They were all really good expressions of what they were supposed to be, right?
I like that. The Spanish wines have more focus, and they probably do to the fact that there's an expectation of what we're looking for stylistically. I think if you say a Ribera, it should taste like that. If we say what should an Argentinian Tempranillo taste like, I don't think we've got a lot to kind of benchmark it with.
There's more weight of expectation and anticipation on the Spanish wines than there is on the others because they become an unknown entity.
So let's have a little look
Let's
have a little look at the favourites. Oh, look at that. At that. Sons of Eden at the top.
Betis. Karen Mussin at number 3.
There we are. And once again, I think it's really important to say when we put these things up, what I'm hoping is, for any of our lovely winemakers who end up watching this, coming sixth of 6 of the best Tempranillos I could find in the world. It's not last place. It's 6 out of everything. I'm hoping, you don't feel the wines that you've not voted for that you had to pour down the sink because you weren't able to drink them. I hope they find that. But yeah, the Sons of Eden was great. The Karamusi drinkable and the Vita. But isn't it interesting that 2 of the top 3 aren't from Spain?
Spanish.
But there we go. So anyway, we'll go to the final little bit so you can see if we want. Do you want to get your guitar and your lyrics?
I will.
Because Lee does have his guitar, so we'll go along with that. But while he gets himself set up, next month we're doing Old World versus New World, so dive in for that. Going into December, we're going to be doing fortified wines. That's going to be a pre-recorded one, so you guys can watch it whenever you would like to watch it. And then we're getting planned in for the new year. Alex is out in the States at the moment looking at some fun bits and pieces as to what we can do going forward. We want to do some more getting into vineyards so you can actually meet the people and all that kind of stuff. What else does Sons of Eden make? They make some Shiraz, they make some Chardonnay, they make a lot of the classic things that you would expect from Barossa, Ian. So have a little look at them and go from there. And before we go to this song, let's just pop the prices up, he says. There we go. So, some really good value. The Sons of Eden, you would have
That's
probably
ridiculous,
expected to be, but would have expected to be that. But, you look at that. If you had a world-class 10-year-old Rioja, you'd be spending a lot more than 30 quid on it.
Yeah.
And you look at that, the Vitas, the ones that are a little bit more expensive, tiny production, and that's what it is. And Karamusi at 17 quid for just drink it all day, every day. And as always, you can go there, /Tempranillo to get in there, free shipping with any 6+ bottles, and you can mix and match those, it's 6 bottles mix and match with these wines or any from the previous tastings that you've had. So
I think all of those, and they're all different, and it's horses for courses, as we've established. I think all of those are tremendous value, depending what you want your wine to do.
Absolutely.
I think they're all great value. And that Toro for 25 quid, it's ridiculous. That's brilliant.
Fantastic. So let me put us back on as people vote for their value.
Get them to us.
They should probably vote before you start singing.
Yeah. I'll explain that there's a lyric in the song about a hat, and it's not even an important lyric by any stretch, but I thought I should put a hat on because a hat gets mentioned.
And he didn't bring me a hat,
in the song.
Would love your comments. Apparently, I'm singing for the first time ever on the Online Wine Tasting Club, so we'll see how quickly. There's 20 people watching right now, so let's see how quickly this gets down to 0.
Watch it disappear.
Exactly. Anyway, you lead in and I'll join.
I sincerely apologise. When the day is dawning on a Spanish Sunday morning, how I long to be there with the grapes waiting for me there. Every lonely vineyard where I hang my hat ain't as half as tasty as where my Tempie's at. Is this a glass of Tempranillo? Every night I've been drinking my vino, dreaming dreams of Tempranillo, and sweet fruit who waits for me. Give me a glass of Tempranillo. I've been drinking Spanish vino, talking about Tempranillo, a sweet fruit who waits for me. There's an online tasting, hear the wines of joy they're pouring for the sweet old Tempe, and the ones coming to taste her just beyond Rioja. There's an open plain, and it keeps me drinking through the wind and rain. Is this a glass of Tempranillo? Every night I've been drinking my vino, dreaming dreams of Tempranillo, sweet fruit who waits for me. Give me a glass of Tempranillo. I've been drinking Spanish vino, talking about the Tempranillo, sweet fruit who waits for me. Sorry, I can't read the lyrics. Hang on there. Sha la 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 la. Sha la 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 la.
Drink.
Sha la 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 la. Sweet fruit who waits for me. Sweet fruit who waits for me. Sweet fruit who waits for me.
Well, there we are. We'll not do that again. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, and good night.
Cheers.